Hi guys, Speedy here. Welcome back to another episode of Planet Zoo, into our third episode today, and we'll be focusing on two different things. The first one is the beginnings of our main street, where you can see our path already laid out here, and then we'll be on to our next habitat, the West African lion, the king of the jungle. Before we get into that though, we are just going to move around and add some extra details here in the park. Getting this rock wall that was started on one side of the creek bed up onto both sides to, I guess, envelop this section of our river. Probably look to add a bit of a beachy section later, but for now, really liking the way that this rock wall is tying the whole area together. Probably this will be a piece by piece, just adding on bits each episode, although the river is not that long. Also adding some sand texture here, and then adding some of these mossy rocks, which there weren't as many of in the original thing, and just to give a bit of a different feel to each section of our river, so it doesn't all look the same, of course. Adding on some foliage here at the end, some reeds in the water, and now getting on to the next section of our park, which is going to be over here, our main street. Wanting to clear out an area in the middle for a big centerpiece type feature. Did I make that feature in this episode? I absolutely did not, but we have a place for it. We know where we might put it. So here I'm just using the brick 1 meter walls to create the barrier around it. The idea for the street is that eventually the majority of the zoo guests will need to walk down this section of the park in order to reach the rest of the zoo. So there'll be some shops, some visual attractions here. So it's a really grand entrance for the zoo. Having done that, I then forgot to record the next section, but we made this path thing on the bridge, a bit of a feature there with the trees, and then added 4 buildings here, each using a bit of a different style and some different materials. So some shops will go in here eventually. A couple are already in, although they're not powered at this point because I haven't put in a power. I really like colouring the limestone pieces. I feel like that's a really easy way to differentiate and liven up the buildings a bit, so I did that here, adding some framing, some detailing, which is becoming a bit of a cliche style for my building at this stage, but hopefully we will be able to develop and try out some new things. In terms of my growth and development, not only with the building but also with these videos, I'm still trying to find a bit of a balance with the commentary. Do I just kind of comment on what I'm doing? Hopefully, as the park starts to expand and I start to develop a bit more as a Planet Zoo player with some more complex build, there'll be more to talk about. Some of the commentaries will be a little bit more interesting. At the moment, I guess I struggle a little bit when I'm just sitting here putting wooden supports and windows onto a building. Using windows for the first time on some of these buildings, it's just a nice way to kind of add a bit of detail. This big brick building here in the middle is kind of going to be the feature of the feature. It's the visual eye-catching component of the main street, and wanted to add a clock here now. Had to make sure I had it up the right way, so playing around with the time just to make sure. Yep, okay. So now just adding some detailing around it so that it doesn't look so odd, adding these stone pieces. Having a quick look around what I want to add, coming over to this building here, doing something a little bit different with these pieces and having them all along the bottom. I didn't end up adding them to the top, although in hindsight I kind of wish I had. That might be something to go back and do at a later date. Some columns on the side here, but I feel like if I move those pieces up to the top to really enclose that whole front, it might look a little bit better, although it might not. So I guess we will see there. Just having a quick look around, and now we move on to the other side of the street. So the goal here was to build a very large building to house the first lot of staffing facilities. So most of the time I think these will be just locked away, tucked away, hidden away. But for this particular building, I really wanted a lot of these to be visible to guests, because if you've ever been to a real life zoo, and I know at least the ones that I have been to, often things like keeper huts and the veterinary clinic, these are available for the public to look into so that you can really get an idea of what goes on behind the scenes. And they're almost an attraction in their own right at a zoo. So with the feature that I was able to enable in having guests not be affected negatively by these buildings, I really wanted them to be a feature of the main street so that guests could come in, look through the window into these. I moved some of them upstairs on purpose to, first of all, I wanted a two-story building, and just for a bit of realism, I feel like guests wouldn't staff wouldn't want their staff room down at ground level with visitors peering in, but they also might want to be able to look down over the main street. Got the pathing done, although we weren't done yet because I had to play around with this. Pathing, unsurprisingly, was an absolute pain, but we eventually got there with a little bit of off-camera work, as you can see. Close that in, and now enclosing in the rest of the building. So this is just going to be one very large building, so kind of in a contrast to the other side of the street. A brick first floor already enclosed in, and then a concrete second floor, so sort of creating that render effect. When we get to that, we end up starting with the default concrete, and then I feel like it's a bit dark, so go to a very white concrete. And still here, not showing if I just want these bits overhanging. Decide that I want the whole second floor overhanging as well as the shops, so that the whole building appears to have that sort of two-level effect from the street view, I guess. Just trying to get in some concrete flooring. Lost the piece there, it was miles away. Sometimes happen. And closing in the bottom there. And then using these pieces to just try and hide some of the grass, although because this will all be hidden away, it's not the be-all and end-all. So I'm not super worried about hiding all of these pieces, just hiding some of the big pieces and the ones that are visible through that door. And then finally onto the roof. Played around with a few, and we end up going with the metal plank and going for a big single continuous roof here, so joining up to meet at a point. So just moving the roof pieces up, closing it all in, matching the pitch here with this piece, a couple of triangles in there, and voila. As far as this building goes, it will definitely need some more work. Missing some details, missing some signs, decorations. It's kind of just a big contiguous blob of brick and concrete at the moment. But we will get to that when we finish off the rest of Main Street. Just removing these staff facilities because I don't need them at this point. And now finally on to the meat of the episode, which is our habitat for our West African lion. Still just using the default barriers here with the concrete and some reinforced glass. We'll probably look to play around with some custom barriers or using the null barriers at a later date, but for now I'm trying not to overextend myself in what I am capable of, not only skill-wise but also within the time constraints of a video, because I am conscious about not making these videos too long, trying to keep them under 20 minutes. 15 to 18, probably more of an achievable mark. I made this enclosure huge, by the way. 8 lions needed about 1,500 square meters. I didn't get 8 lions, I got like 3, and I have about a 5,500 square meter enclosure, but I guess there'll be lots of space and gives us lots of options if we did want to make a really big pride of lions. Coming into this with my design, what I really wanted was to have a big rock formation in the center with the den hidden away underneath behind it. So kind of just plotting out where that's going to be. Just like last time, I'm going to throw some lions into the enclosure so that I can balance out the right sort of terrain and all of those features, making sure they've got what they need. The terrain and the foliage is something that I'm a little bit trying to work on. So as I've been getting into making these videos and getting back into Planet Zoo in general, I've been watching a lot of other videos on YouTube, and it's great for inspiration and getting ideas, but it's also very overwhelming going from looking at the habitats that I'm creating right now to what some people on YouTube can make. And you just gotta I guess I need to temper my own expectations in that I can't just expect to come in and make these awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping habitats. So I'm hoping to get some inspiration and learn a few things and maybe spruce up some of my habitats that I've already made in terms of layout and style. So a few different things around barriers and terrain modification and elevations, but also I guess in terms of decoration and what the inside of it looks like. And it is a bit difficult as well because these animals from the African savanna don't have there's a lot of like empty open space just by nature of the animals that I'm putting in, so I can't necessarily expect to make huge dense foliage exhibits, but maybe looking to add some more grasses and ground coverings is probably what this enclosure and probably the giraffe enclosure needs as well, because with the terrain brush grass I also want to do something about these water and food feeders, but that's a different conversation. They do look a bit of an eyesore just sticking out there, and blending them into the habitat would probably be a lot of a nicer touch. Getting back to what I was saying, the grass kind of just looks like green carpet almost, especially the short grass. So adding in some actual grass foliage into the enclosure would definitely, I think, go a long way in making it look and feel a lot more natural. What I've been trying to do, what I tried to do a bit with the giraffe enclosure, but some more never really hurts. Added in the umbrella acacias as well, just before when I was adding in a few of those trees. They do really feel like those stereotypical savanna tree that you see out on those safaris with the big shade that they create and the animals lounging underneath them to escape the hot sun. Trying again to add the foliage spots that I sort of did with the giraffe exhibit with some rocks, but maybe some more of these is what this enclosure needs, because as I said before, the green textures of the terrain brushes just isn't quite the right vibe. I was trying to balance everything here. I really don't like the rock look in particular. That is the look of the rock terrain in opposed to the savanna rocks, but we can work on that. Last couple of things here, adding in some enrichment items around some food and just some toy enrichment items for the lions. Putting some foliage here on this rock pile now, and then seeing the lions sort of come in and start interacting in the exhibit, and then wanting to add some education boards. So plonked them down and then discovered I didn't have any power because I only had the one power station way over there. Just thrown that and the water filter in at the minute. I will definitely work on blending these in because they are very ugly right now, just kind of sticking out there, and they don't blend in with the path very well. But I just wanted to get some education signs up to make the enclosure sort of come together and feel more like a zoo. And then the final detailing for this episode, expanding the river wall along, so just keeping that going a little bit further, just like with our rocks. So that'll probably go all the way to the end of this river section here. But there is our lion exhibit. So I will leave you guys to explore the new features of the zoo as we see one of our lionesses jumping from rock to rock. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you're keen for more Planet Zoo content, hit that subscribe button. But I've been Speedy, and I'll see you all next time.